would like meditate and then just kind of freeform listen, and then I would jot down notes as to what I was getting. And the first time that I literally channeled loved ones, I got the name Joyce, and I knew immediately that that was the mother of my college roommate who had recently passed into spirit. And so I wrote down all these notes, and then after my session, I excitedly called my former roommate and I told her what I got, including things like slippers in the hospital and magical mystery tour. And she confirmed, yes, I brought my mother slippers in the hospital. Yes, we went to see magical mystery tour together. And so it was very affirming that I was getting it.
Hello, my dear friends. I'm Donald Lee, and this is Expressing and Revealing Your Truth with Donald Lee. It's a podcast in which I help you understand the truth about who you really are and how you can express and reveal that truth in the world. To do that, I interview people who have had transformational spiritual experiences. The type of spiritual experiences that many of us wish we had, but never do. Yet by learning from my guests' experiences and from the wisdom they have gained from these experiences, all of us can glimpse a bigger vision of who we really are and how we can live our lives more fully, more peacefully, more lovingly. Be sure to download my free mini ebook containing 5 of the 50 parables from my popular book, The Band Director's Lessons About Life. These little parables are short, easy to read, inspiring, and also help you to understand more about who you really are. There is a link in the show notes to get your free ebook. In this episode, I interview Kelly Palmatier. She has been a psychic since birth, so although she has had some key spiritual turning points in her life, she didn't have a really transformational spiritual experience that awakened her to her spiritual gifts and to spiritual reality. She always knew about these. But she did pursue what we would call a normal career for quite a while before she was guided to use her psychic gifts to help people. Now that's what she does. Kelly is a psychic and a channel and helps people to find direction in their lives. She is full of wisdom, and I'm sure you will enjoy this delightful conversation with Kelly Palmatier. Hello, my dear friends. We're here today with Kelly Palmatier. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, Palmatier is correct.
Okay, wonderful. And Kelly has a fascinating experience. Kelly is a psychic and a channel, and that's the work that she does, helping people, with those gifts and those skills that she has. And most of the people that we interview or that I interview on this podcast have had a transformational spiritual experience that, opened their eyes to what I often call spiritual reality. But Kelly was psychic from birth, and that presents its own challenges. So this will be a very interesting story from Kelly Palmatier. So welcome, Kelly, and please tell us your story. I'm sure you've told your story before many times. You know what to say. You know how to do it.
All right. Well, first of all, hello. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I have been psychic since birth. I had little things happen to me throughout my childhood, but then I actively worked at developing it all throughout high school and college. I was very passionate about it, very interested. So I read a lot of books and I experimented, and then I ended up studying parapsychology at University of Kent at Canterbury with Professor Chris Cherry over in England, and learned a lot there. And I also mentored under professional psychic Jo Wynn. She's in Sussex, England, and that was, of course, a very great experience. So by the time I graduated from college, I was pretty advanced with my psychic skills. However, that was back in the 80s. It was long before the internet. And so in order to be a professional psychic at that time, you kind of have this image of like someone with a house on the side of the road with a big neon sign in the window, psychic. and that just
That's
wasn't for
right.
me.
Wears funny clothes and has a crystal ball,
Well,
and
I mean,
yeah.
I wear funny clothes and have a crystal ball now, so that's neither here nor there.
You know,
But,
Kelly, when you were saying you're developing your psychic skills when you were in high school, that sounds to me like a prescription for a lot of negative social attention. How did that work? Just out of curiosity, in your high school, were you ostracized? Did you have a lot of people who like, didn't like you, or did you just keep it all secret?
um, neither of those. I
Okay.
shared it with my close friends, and everybody thought it was super cool.
That's awesome.
You know, this was before the age of caller ID, and I would answer the phone greeting my friends by name. "Hi, Leslie. Hi, Jean. Hi, Mitchell." And they would be like, "How did you know? Who was calling?" And, it just I could feel their energy. So, yeah, it was cool. And, when you're a teenager, you want nothing more than to be cool with your friends, so it worked out really well.
Well, that's
But,
good. I'm glad it was cool because
yeah,
sometimes people find it's very uncool.
those were not my people. Fair
Good,
enough.
good.
So anyway, I ended up by the time I graduated from college, I decided that being a professional psychic wasn't the direction I wanted to go. So I entered the corporate world. I flew for Delta Airlines. I worked for them for 10 years. And then I started a web design and marketing firm, which I ran for 20 years. But I did psychic readings on the side just for family and friends once in a while, whenever we felt like it, for 30 something years. But then it was in 2017. Now here's the big spiritual, moment that you're asking me for. In 2017, I knew that I wasn't on the path that I really wanted to be on. I wanted to make a bigger difference in the world. So I was sitting at the base of a waterfall, praying, meditating, getting in touch with nature, talking to my loved ones who've crossed over, and I asked for guidance. I just said, I want to make a difference in the world. If there's something I can do to help others that I'm not already doing, please give me a sign, and I'll try and do what you say. And of course, I was expecting something subtle. A friend would loan me a book or something like that. No, what I got was a lightning bolt. Not exactly, but it felt like a lightning bolt. What I got was boom, a direct message just popped into my head telling me to become a medium to channel loved ones who've crossed over. So I was like, okay, how shall I do this? Like I knew what a medium was, I'd seen them on TV, but I'd never identified as one myself. And I got a direct message just popped into my head read books, spend time in meditation, connect with other psychics and mediums. So I started doing all of that right away. By the end of the month, I was channeling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was great. I started off um where I would like meditate and then just kind of free form listen and then I would jot down notes as to what I was getting. And the first time that I literally channeled loved ones, I got the name Joyce and I knew immediately that that was the mother of my college roommate who had recently passed into spirit. And so I wrote down all these notes. And then after my session, I excitedly called my former roommate and I told her what I got, including things like um, slippers in the hospital and magical mystery tour. And she confirmed, yes, I brought my mother's slippers in the hospital. Yes, we went to see magical mystery tour together. And so it was very affirming that I was getting it, but I needed experience and I wasn't, you know, advanced enough to put myself out there professionally. But what I did is I put it out there on the internet in a local Facebook group and I said, "Hey, I'm learning to be a medium. I need some experience. I'll do free mediumship readings, free or whatever love offering works for you, just because I need to practice." And it took off. It went viral in my local market. So I ended up getting people multiple readings every night and every weekend day for months. And it was going well, I was getting hits. People were telling me I was getting stuff. So I was happy about that. But still, Donald, it just felt too easy. And so I kind of wondered, am I humoring myself? I'm getting these things, but maybe my clients are kind of making it fit. It just felt too easy. And then one day I was doing a reading for someone and I said, is there a Ray or a Roy? And everybody in the room gasped. His name was Roy Ray. I was like, holy wow. I'm like really doing this. So, and then it's just continued to advance from there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
You on your website, you mentioned when you were 8 years old, you got a message from your great-grandfather who had
Yeah.
of course, not many of us have living great-grandparents, so, can you share that little story with us? So this
Sure,
is 8 years
yes.
old. Was did your parents know at this time when you're 8 years old, or was this was this incident with your great-grandfather, was that the
I
opening of the
wouldn't
eyes
say
of your
that my
parents to your
family
skills?
looked at me any differently. They just kind of thought, that's Kelly. But yeah, so the situation was, um, when I was about 8 years old, my family at the time, this would be my mother, my stepfather, whom I called Papa, and my sister, birth sister Lee. So the four of us were sitting around the dining table after dinner one night, and we decided, oh, we're just going to have a seance. And so my papa led us all in a seance. And, at the time, I just thought, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. I had no idea that, not everybody has seances after dinner, you know, that it is kind of a weird thing. But, when you're a kid, you just accept what's in front of you as this is the way it is. So we did this seance. We lit a candle. We held hands around the table. My papa led us. And he just said, all right, spirits, if there's anything that we need to know, if there's any messages you want to bring through, we are listening now. And to us, he said, if anybody feels anything, speak up. And I just spoke up. I said, well, I feel like my great grandfather's here and he wants to say that mom is going to get the job that she applied for in Atlanta, 400 miles away, and that we should start looking for a house. And of course, it all came to pass. That was the earliest experience that indicated that I would go on to be a medium. I mean, at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think that I was a medium. And it feels, sometimes, especially for beginner mediums, it can feel a lot like your imagination, which is why, when I talked about, am I humoring myself?
Mhm.
Until you get those evidential hits, you can't be 100% sure. You can think
Right,
you're sure, but it's really the feedback from the sitter that is
right,
vitally important.
right. Well, you raise a good point, which is a question for a lot of people, including me. Others have told me that at first they had a hard time um, distinguishing between, is this just my imagination? Am I just thinking this? Am I dreaming this? Or is this really a message? And so my understanding is I don't have any of these wonderful gifts. I'm envious. But my understanding is that that's part of the skill and the discernment that comes with experience, being able to tell what's a dream and what's really a message. Is that, can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. As you become more experienced, you start to recognize patterns. There's some things even when you're not experienced where you can have something like that very first one that I had sitting at the waterfall. Boom, I knew I had a very distinct thought in my head, and I knew that that thought did not follow my normal train of thought. It
Okay.
felt distinctly external.
Yeah.
But there are other things too. Like, for example, for me, clairsentience is one of my strongest clairs. And so that would be referring to feeling. Being an empath, for example, when you feel the emotions of others, that is a form of clairsentience. But for me, actually, physically feeling the energy is also quite strong. And that includes sort of a spatial awareness of I'm feeling energy here or I'm feeling energy here. And so for me, one of the ways that I can tell for sure that I'm experiencing a spirit and not just something that's psychic, for example, is that I can have the spirit t- form. And this happened because I started doing it spontaneously. But now, like if I'm doing a murder investigation, for example, I might say, if this is an actual spirit in spirit form, I want you to present yourself here where I physically feel your energy. And it for me, it's on my left side is the strongest. And I will feel it's almost like a thickening of the atmosphere, if that makes any sense. It just feels like I'm just getting, pulled in this direction. Yeah, that's about as clear as I can explain it.
Okay, that's good. You know, I I've had the experience because I've been a musician and I'm now an author. And in both of those creative endeavors, there's been times in the past, ever since I was a teenager, really. And, you know, as a teenager, I was into music and I started writing some music. And even as a teenager, I sensed that, when I would get something, I thought, oh, that's a really good melody, or that's a really good, that I like that. That sounds really good. I noticed the sense that that didn't really come from me. That kind of came through me.
Yeah.
It's like that the best melodies came from somewhere else
Mhm.
and they were given to me somehow, or you know what I mean? And sometimes I get the same sense with some of my writing. If there's a part that uh, I now that I'm not getting up to an alarm clock anymore, I'm officially retired. But like it sometimes say, the problem with being retired is you never get a day off. So, I work every day, but I don't get up to an alarm anymore. And so I really cherish that slow waking up time and that state of consciousness where you're not quite asleep and you're not quite awake. It's called the hypnagogic state.
Yes.
And it's a state in which many of us who don't have, developed psychic gifts like
Mhm.
you can can access that other the psychic world, the spiritual world, whatever it is, where ideas can come into our mind and we can be consciously aware of them. So I often do get ideas, and when something starts forming in my mind, then okay, now I got to get up. Now I got to get out of bed and write it down right away before I forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, what you're describing is quite common, and it does make me want to mention that I believe that everybody has some level of psychic ability. It's just that some people will work at developing it, as I did. And of course, obviously, some people have a stronger natural proclivity. But but yeah, everybody has that. And what you're describing, where you're kind of on the cusp between wakefulness and sleep, that hypnagogic state, I find that that is very similar to meditating. And so,
Hmm.
for people that want to develop their skills or strengthen existing skills, meditation is certainly one of the easiest ways, the most effective ways to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And I keep working at meditating. I've always been lousy at meditating, like many people are, but I keep working at it.
Well, they do call it a meditation practice.
That's right, that's right. It's like being a musician, like, you
Yeah.
keep practicing, keep practicing.
But I find that
Uh,
even if you just do a few minutes of meditation, if you do it on a regular basis, that can really make a difference.
yes, and also that's like practicing a musical instrument. The regularity is so important. Yeah. Now, you mentioned just kind of in passing when you're working on a police case.
Uh.
So you do some of that work. Can you tell us a little bit about, anonymously some of the police work that you've done and what they come to you to try to find out?
Sure. So the first thing is I just want to be completely transparent and say that I don't do a lot of work with law enforcement. I've done a few cases here and there. More often, I'll get family members coming to me and wondering about a loved one's passing and wanting some details about how they passed, the circumstances there. The thing is, when I work with law enforcement, it's very hush hush in terms of I don't get feedback. Earlier I talked about how important it is from the sitter for them to say, oh, yes, that makes sense, or that's not resonating with me. What I find is sometimes, even if I'm coming through with things that are very um, strong and I know that it's from spirit, it might be that it is a different spirit than the one we were thinking, or it might be something that the client can't validate at that moment. But either way, it's good to know to get that feedback from the client. And when I'm working for law enforcement, all I can say is, I'm getting this, I'm getting this, I'm getting that. And then I have no idea how much of that or which of those things really helped or resonated. I have had some feedback, enough feedback that says that they believe I'm legitimate and that I should keep doing what I'm doing. So, that's I'm thankful that I got at least that much.
Yeah, yeah, but they don't come back to you because their work is secret in a sense, right? So they don't come back to you and say, "Yeah, we went to that place and we found that evidence and we got the guy." They don't tell you that,
Well,
right?
I mean, if it were all wrapped up, I like to think that maybe they would reach out to me and say something, but they're busy. And honestly, the things sometimes I might bring through things that are meaningful, but if it doesn't lead to them solving the case, you know, they're not going to bring that back to me. And what we of course we can all recognize that there are parts of a case that need to remain unknown to the general public.
Yes.
Because then when they find someone, it can't have been planted, et cetera, et cetera.
Just a little break from the program to mention a couple of things. Firstly, if you're enjoying this podcast, please like and subscribe. It really helps the algorithm to find more people who would enjoy these interviews. Also, if you're interested in spiritual growth, you might be interested in my series of spiritual books. As a spiritual author and a former band director, I use my little the band director trademark in these books because I use music as a metaphor for life and our journey of becoming a musician as a metaphor for our spiritual journey. There are 3 books in these series. The Band Director's Lessons About Life is a book of modern-day parables inspired by events from my teaching career. When you're working with kids, things naturally come up that we sometimes call teachable moments. Little events where you realize that there's a bigger lesson happening right now than the alternate F-sharp fingering on the clarinet that I was trying to teach. I started writing some of these little stories down and turning them into modern-day parables. So, the Band Director's Lessons About Life has 50 little parables. It's a bit like a Chicken Soup for the Soul book. Each parable is about 3 pages long. Each begins with a story that happened in school, and then there's a reflection section that draws a spiritual lesson out of the events of the story. That is, it explains what the spiritual metaphor means. The Band Director's Lessons About Life is easy to read, makes a great gift, and expresses many universal spiritual principles in an easy-to-understand way. If you want to go deeper in your spiritual growth, I've also published a study guide to accompany the Book of Parables. It turns the Band Director's Lessons About Life into a year-long course in spiritual development. You will spend a week on each of the 50 parables. There's a deeper teaching about the meaning of each parable, reflection and discussion questions, especially if you would like to use the study guide in a group setting, and a different meditation for each lesson. The third book in the series is a little book titled The Band Director's Pocket Guide to Spiritual Growth. This little book explains a simple 3-step process for putting your spiritual growth into high gear. You can learn more about all these 3 books and my other books at my website, www.cominghomespirit.com. Because, after all of us are on a spiritual journey back home to God. So that's cominghomespirit.com. You can also go directly to my Shopify page at cominghomespirit.myshopify.com, where you can purchase my books directly from me. At the moment, I can only ship paperback books within the continental United States. So if you live in other countries, you will need to purchase my books through Amazon in your own country. If you're enjoying this podcast, I really think you'll enjoy my Band Director series of books as well. Now, back to the program. There's another question that I wanted to ask you, Kelly. You know, within Christianity, we have this long tradition, and it's based on just a couple of little passages in the Bible. But we have this tradition that it's a bad idea to contact spirits of the dead. Do you run into that in your work? And have you addressed that potential conflict in your own work?
Sure. Yes. So, first of all, I'm just going to acknowledge I'm not an expert, a scholar on all of the different passages of the Bible, but I do know that there are people out there who have disputed that, and
Okay.
given Bible passages that indicate that connecting with spirit is not a bad thing, and also that it's something that do as I do, that sort of thing. But I'm not gonna get into whether or not it's, good for Christians to do this. What I will say is
Yeah.
that I
There
have
there are
talked.
there are definitely theological arguments on both sides, yes.
Yes, yes. But what I will say is that there have definitely been Christians who have come to me and who have said, "I'm not sure if I wanna do this." And I will talk to them about, like, in my case, I work only in the realm of light. I put a protective bubble around us when we work. I ask our spirit guides for only positive messages that serve highest good. I bring through only spirits or guides of high vibration or benevolent intent. And so, like, I personally, my company name is Channeling White Light because I'm channeling white light towards a better world. So for me, working only in the realm of light is very important. Not everybody does quite in the way that I do. So I believe that if someone does want to consider this, that they should choose someone who works only in the realm of light. And then another thing that I tell people is I say, think about it and pray. Pray about it. Ask God directly, you know, is this something that will be beneficial to me? And that way,
Right.
if you're getting that answer from God directly, that it's okay to do it. It's interesting. I had a session once where a client came to me, and I had no idea that she was Christian. I had no idea that she had been on the fence about doing this. But what I got was right. Normally, when I start a mediumship session, I'll immediately go to male or female, what generation, is it older, is it younger? And so I was surprised when I opened up the gateway to this session that I didn't go directly to my normal go to. Instead, what I immediately got was my symbol for spirituality. And I got this feeling of a blessing, that there was a blessing around this session, that the session was holy and that it was helpful. Oh, I'm getting chills now just thinking about it. And then after I told her that that's what her spirits were saying, first and foremost, she was so moved by that, and she said that she had truly been on the fence, about whether or not she should pursue the session because of her religion. So it was a
Right.
beautiful, validating, affirming reading.
Yeah. Her guides and angels or whoever was there knew that already, that was a concern for her, and
Exactly.
wanted to comfort her and assure
Yeah,
that it was okay.
that she needed to hear it.
Yeah. Now, on your website, you also mention that you use the tarot cards as part of your work. Can you explain kind of how that fits in? Do you need to use the tarot cards? I've heard of other people who started out using the tarot cards, but then gradually found that they didn't really need them and don't use them anymore.
Right.
How does that fit in with your work, Kelly?
Yeah, so when I first learned to do readings back in the late 80s, I used tarot cards. That's how I learned. And so tarot cards are very comfortable for me. However, I have definitely come to the point where I don't require tarot cards. I can do a complete psychic reading without any divination tools at all. Um, but I find that when I'm doing a psychic reading, versus mediumship, let me just back up for a moment because not everybody knows this.
Yes.
Psychic just means that I pick up on information outside of the five physical senses, whereas medium means I can use those skills to connect with loved ones who've crossed over. So, a little fun fact, every medium technically is a psychic, but not every psychic is a medium.
Okay,
Now,
good.
psychic readings are,
Thank you for that
yeah.
clarification,
Oh,
Kelly.
sure. You're very welcome. Now, a psychic reading is great for getting insight into the path you're on at the moment and what may be coming up for you in the future, keeping in mind, of course, that we have free will and the future can change. Mediumship is when we're connecting with loved ones who've crossed over. Now, so for me, whenever I'm doing a psychic reading, I find that if my client doesn't have any preference, I still enjoy using the tarot cards in addition to tuning in directly to the energy. What I find is that the tarot cards are kind of like keeping me in check. So, for example, I might pick up on say I'm doing a reading for a lady, and I might pick up on the living energy of a masculine energy that's her generation that feels like a partner. And I might pick up on some conflict there between them. I might pick all of that up just from the energy. And then I can tell her, this is what I've picked up. But then when I lay the cards out, I may see the king of air in the past, and I may see the king of water in the future, and that may indicate that yes, you've had this person who was more difficult to deal with in the past, but then they're transitioning into the future as getting along better, resolution of the emotional level. So the cards are kind of laying out some of the details that work very nicely with the information that I pick up energetically.
Okay, good. That's very helpful to know. Now, when you say you channel the spirits of people who have passed over, there are others who bring in all kinds of discarnate, that is, spirits who are not in a body. They could be all
Yes.
kinds of, extraterrestrials, interdimensional beings, Saint Michael's. Have you ever connected with any of those? Is that something you've done, or just you've never connected? Have you tried?
That's a great question. So I would say that I have never officially tried to channel a non-human entity. I know
Okay.
there are lots of people that do that and love it and bring through all sorts of wisdom. For me, I have been very strongly focused on being an evidential medium. So I'm not trying to knock someone who channels, celestial beings and they bring through this beautiful, inspiring, message of wisdom. That's great. And it can help a lot of people. But a lot of times when you're channeling messages that are about wisdom and guidance, they're not necessarily always going to be evidential. And so for me, I've been really focused on developing my skills as an evidential psychic medium. And so what that means is that I'll pick up on details such as a spirit's appearance, their personality, how they passed, family memories, inside jokes, and even exact names. I now get exact names in about half of my readings. And I get crazily specific details in my readings, such as one of my favorites was inflatable Tyrannosaurus rex. Yep, that made sense. Or one that I got was an albatross around the neck. Oh yes, my uncle who died of brain cancer was wearing one in his coffin.
Oh,
Seriously, like these details that you can't make up, you can't guess something like that, and
yeah.
details that there's no way it's going to be listed on Google or social media. So I'm very big on picking up on evidential details, so I haven't focused on trying to channel, other discarnate entities besides loved ones who crossed over. However, there was one mediumship reading I did years ago when I was bringing through I had a lovely couple sitting in front of me, and I was channeling their son who had passed in a boating accident. And I was able to, talk about my symbol for an accident. I was getting something in the head. Yes, he'd gotten hit in the head. And and so I was bringing through these details where they knew I was genuinely channeling their son. And then I said, "Oh, I've just got my symbol for a mother." So I'm picking up on a mother. At this point, I'm thinking, obviously, the mother of the son is sitting right here in front of me, so it's not her. But I must be channeling somebody else now. Maybe it's onto her grandmother. I don't know. But I got my symbol for mother, and then I got an exact name. Um, and I said, "Oh, I just got the name Mary." And both of the people said, "Oh, yes, that makes sense." I said, "Okay, great. Well, so who's the mother named Mary?" And they proceeded to inform me that this was the Blessed Mother Mary. And that surprised me because I'd never channeled any other entities like that. And so I was like, "Oh." And I'm just kind of thinking maybe, but I wasn't like sure that I was believing them. But then they went on to tell me that, they'd had another phone reading from another medium at one point, and she had said that the Mother Mary was with their son, but more importantly, they had been praying to the Blessed Mother Mary to be with their son.
Right.
So then it was evidential, and once they told me that, then the Blessed Mother Mary allowed me to feel her presence. And
Ah,
she
that's beautiful.
this rush of light and energy came through me, and it was the most beautiful, loving, expansive energy that you can imagine.
Yeah. I'm sure it was. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's a pity that's only happened one time.
Well, I did channel her one other time, but it wasn't quite as spectacular of a story.
Okay. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So you touched on the idea earlier, Kelly, that all of us have these skills sort of innate
Mhm.
in embryonic form or something like that. And all skills. I mean, I've been a musician, right? So I think of in terms of music skills. And when I teach students, and everyone can learn to play a musical instrument, everyone can learn to sing. So many people say, "Oh, I can't sing," or "I can't do that," or whatever. Well, all of us can learn. There is that innate ability to do that. And I think you would agree that our psychic abilities are the same way. And I wonder if there's we did mention meditation. Is there is there anything else that people can do to try to sort of develop their innate the five clairs, for example, or their psychic skills in any way?
Yes, of course. There are lots and lots of exercises that people can do. You mentioned the five clairs, and basically that's a great exercise is to go through each clair and focus on experiencing that in a tangible way. So, for people who may not be familiar with it, clairvoyance would be clear seeing, clairaudience would be hearing, clairalliance is smelling, clairsentience is feel, clairgustance is taste. So, what you can do is let's take, for example, clairvoyance, psychic seeing. So, what you can do is you can pick an object, any object. I just happen to have this crystal in front of me. So, you can take an object and you can stare at it very intently, and you can notice, oh, the way the light is reflecting on this particular angle in the crystal, and and it's got this little crevice next to it, and then that little sticky up part, and so what you can do is you can really focus on all the different particular features, characteristics of whatever item it is that you're looking at. Then close your eyes relax, breathe deeply, and bring back into your mind's eye all of those features that you just went through. It may feel like imagination, but basically you are using the same muscles that are used in clairvoyant psychic imagery. And then you
Awesome.
can
That
do that again with, you can, ring a bell and listen to the way the sound vibrations gently fade out, or the timbre of the sound. You can cut a lemon and smell the tartness. There's so many different ways that you can do these ex exercises to strengthen your various clairs.
that's brilliant. I don't know why I didn't think of that just on my own, but that's very helpful. In music, we do a lot of the same things. When you hear something, and all of us are like this, a song that you like, whatever song that you remember from the past that you like that song, if you think about it, you can hear that song in your head.
Yes.
The music doesn't have to be playing outside you in order for you to perceive that music inside of you. And that's really what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yes.
With your incredible and amazing psychic skills, Ellie, and the help that you've been able to give to so many people over the years, are there some general helpful hints that you can pass on to our listeners about, how we can live better, how we can live our lives more, be more happy, more successful, more loving, all of those things that every human wants?
Sure. Yeah. So when I'm tuning in to the energy of my clients, particularly in a psychic reading, I'll really tune in to focus on the energy of the person sitting in front of me in order to pick up things about their lives. And what I have found is that even the most persnickety clients have some element of beauty within them, within their soul. And so I find that it's nice, it's very helpful for people to know that every person around them has some goodness within them. It's nice not to feel like, we are taught in psychology about you know, the immature, selfish nature of humans. But I actually am just reading a book right now called Humankind. I wish I could remember the author's name. Humankind, Rutger Brennan. I don't recall his name, but basically it goes into all of these different reasons where we know scientifically, logically, in all of these studies, that people are innately good for the most part. And so that's one thing that I would like people to know. The other is that when I'm doing mediumship readings and I'm channeling loved ones who've crossed over, there are a few things that come through many times, actually, where it's sort of a general message that spirits will bring through to their loved ones. One is just relax a little bit, have fun. You know, we are spiritual beings living in these physical bodies for the purpose of having the human experience. And sure, the human experience is going to be filled with challenges, but make sure that you also enjoy the fun, the joy of the human experience. So have fun. That's one thing that they often will say. The other thing is that a lot of times when I'm dealing with clients, uh, I may understand that they feel that it is just them against the world. There's this feeling of loneliness. A lot of times people forget that we're connected to all of the energy, and they're very strongly entrenched in the illusion of separateness. And so a lot of times people, when they're struggling with their daily lives, they may feel that it's just them against the world. They may feel lonely or, overwhelmed. And many, many times, all of their loved ones from spirit are coming through to say, "Oh no, honey, we're all right here with you."
My father passed away about 10 years ago or so.
Mm.
And ever since then, particularly when I take a moment to think about my father, I often feel his presence in a sort of a way.
Yes.
And as we touched on a little earlier, maybe it's my imagination, maybe it's just my remembering of, the way my father was and stuff. But yeah, I do think that I feel his presence,
Yeah.
when I think about him. And I
Absolutely.
I don't I don't want to insult anybody, because I know that cremations are common nowadays, and my father was cremated. And sometime after that, a couple of my siblings and whatnot, we went out and we sprinkled his ashes out in the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains in Alberta, where he would often go, and he wanted his ashes spread there. And I tried to be to kind of get into this sacred experience. But as we were spreading his ashes, like, it just became ludicrous to me. I thought, you know what? This little Ziploc baggie with stuff in it, this is not my father. It just isn't. This is nothing. Is that my father still is. And this stuff in the little baggie, that's not him.
It's just a
So,
little tool in the ritual.
yeah, yeah.
But our
So
loved ones often will be with us when we're going through that ritual of spreading ashes, not because they're part of the ashes, but because they're part of us.
yes, that's beautifully said, Kelly. Thank you so much. Now, you did mention the name of your business and your website. Would you mention that again?
Sure, yes. The name of my company is Channeling White Light. And my tagline is channeling white light towards a better world. Because I'm
I
very
love that.
strongly focused on trying to help others, I love that when I do my readings, it helps people have a sense of inspiration or inner peace. And I also am very active in the community. I love to donate group mediumship readings to nonprofit organizations as fundraiser events. And we do a lot of other things for the community as well, blood drives and food drives and whatnot. But yes, people
Good.
can go to my website, channelingwhitelight.com, and there you can learn all about my services, my sliding scale rates, read my reviews, watch video excerpts of my actual readings, see my full availability, and book appointments directly online.
That's wonderful. Kelly, is there anything else that you wanted to mention just before we wrap up?
I would just say thank you for having me. I appreciate that. And I hope that everyone who's listening today hears exactly what they need to hear that serves highest good.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Kelly. And thank you so much for being with me today and being a guest. God bless you on
Yeah.
your journey and
you.
on your way, and may you continue to be a blessing in the lives of so many people.
You as well. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right, bye for now.